Welcome back to Spotlight Television. He is known as one of the most brilliant minds in the retirement community. Curtis Cloke is an award-winning financial professional and retirement income expert with over 30 years of experience in financial services. He is the founder of Acuity Financial and the developer of the hugely successful Thrive Income Distribution System and Retirement Next Gen, a retirement planning software tool that utilizes math and science. A sought-after international keynote speaker and adjunct professor for the American College of Financial Services, he is also the founder and CEO of Thrive University that provides educational workshops, seminars, and presentations on retirement planning, strategies, and techniques. Please welcome back to Spotlight Television, Curtis Cloke. Curtis, welcome back to Spotlight Television. How are you?
I'm good, and thanks for having me, Damon.
Well, it's great to have you back. I don't get to say that to many people, but you were here before, and I enjoyed our conversation very much. But as I like to do with every conversation and every show, why don't you tell the people a little bit about Curtis Cloke?
Well, I grew up in the small town of Burlington, Iowa. During my growing up years, I enjoyed many days on my family farm with my grandparents, and my family enjoyed a lot of my family time there. And in 1987, I was mentored into the financial industry after a 2.5-year injury at a gypsum mine, 630 feet in the ground. Wow. So my life took a completely different twist in terms of direction, and that's kind of how this all began.
And I know we're going to talk about Thrive University today. That's what we're focused on. So let's talk a little bit about that, because Thrive University is one of the leading intensive training programs. I look at the logo, educational resources for cutting-edge retirement planning. What are the tools that you've developed, and what sets you apart from other financial training programs? Let's talk about that.
Well, let me first of all kind of describe how this all began. In 1999, I made some unusual discoveries within the industry. And I happened to meet a chief actuary of MetLife. His name was Garth Bernard. He was the top fixed income actuary. And Garth had read one of the articles I had recently published about how to build an income distribution plan for clients in retirement. Garth became the CEO of my company in 2008, Thrive Income Distribution System, and together we would mutually align our efforts to develop both software and retirement income products in the industry. Garth was the actuary that was on the front edge of the first development of a product called the Fixed Indexed Annuity for Keyport Life. That was the first ever FI product that was developed in the industry, and he was kind of on the cutting edge innovations of many different products. We brought to the market the deferred income annuity, the DIA, and through him, the QLAC, the Qualified Longevity Annuity Contract. Both very specialty products, uniquely used in the income allocation portion of the portfolio. But we developed and invented the buy income, invest the difference, buy income and invest the rest strategies. And it was a strategy that would help clients utilize less of the dollars to generate the income that they needed, so more of the assets could be used for liquidity and growth. And it became a very powerful transition to optimizing and creating efficiency in the retirement plan. So what we created by developing these strategies was this hybrid, was a combination of incorporating the SWIP, Systematic Withdrawal Income Plan, strategy, in addition to the bucket or bucketization strategy that's often popular in the world today of retirement planning, and then the retirement income floor strategy. And these were typically used individually as strategies by the practitioners that worked in the retirement space. But what we realized through our research and development planning and the software that we had developed over the years is that more than 90% of the retirement plans would be far more efficient if you could actually create a hybrid where all three of those components, not individually but universally together, could coordinate as an engine of efficiency. And so that was a game changer in the industry. And you can't do it on a yellow pad. You got to have software to be able to accomplish those goals. So the answer regarding tools is our core product that we developed is called Retirement Next Gen. It's a retirement income planning software that we developed that would coordinate, basically illustrating every and all opportunities of both growth income and liquidity in retirement. So it would allow you to consider lifetime income guarantees in conjunction with systematic withdrawal strategies from the market-based allocation of the portfolio. It would let you test a variety of different strategies with regard to taking Social Security earlier or later, and what spouse should take it first, and whether doing a delay was the most beneficial for the client. It would test whether housing wealth and a HECM strategy was also appropriate in the lineup. And so the retirement income tools were very powerful in helping us not only validate and verify our opinions or the beliefs that we would formulate for the advice that we would give, but it would help advisors also thinly slice those decisions where every decision would have a quantifiable benefit or loss relative to the testing that was completed. Retirement NextGen created within it a patent-pending retirement income dashboard. And that retirement income dashboard quantifies 4 pictorials for both the consumer, the retiree, and the client to recognize simultaneously with each thinly sliced test of when should I retire? What if I retire later? What if one of my spouses what if my spouse passes away before I do? All the questions that get asked, and it quantifies the first measurement, the first pictorial is the investment net worth. It illustrates, do I have more legacy wealth? Do I have more growth dollars with one solution versus another? And it lets you optimize test that. The second measurement is withdrawal rate drag. So it tests, isn't the withdrawal rate that I begin in the beginning of my retirement, is it safe? Is it a safe withdrawal rate or is it not safe? I'm going to talk just a minute about the safe withdrawal rate. You know, it was defined in 1994, the 4% withdrawal rule was established and kind of invented by a financial advisor in San Diego by the name of William Beganin. And it was perceived and believed that based on a 30-year retirement, folks could take a 4% withdrawal against their risk-based, market-based assets and last 30 years. However, since 1994, husbands and wives 65 years old as a couple today are living 4.5 to 5 years longer than they were back in 1994. And market behavior isn't, and we're close to being the same thing. As a matter of fact, if you think about 1994 and 50 years prior, you just about could put as much money as you want into a series of bond ladders and generate 5-6% consistently, never worry about it, never think about it. And then all of a sudden, look what happened to interest rates. And for many years, more than 20 years, we saw these really low interest rates in the economy, which caused those bonds to go down to 1.5, 2, 3. And suddenly the amount of capital that you needed to generate a safe income stream for retirees in retirement, you needed 2, 3, 4 times the amount of capital that you would have had to have, say, 1994 before. And so we had to find a way to create more income using less dollars to not only create flexibility, but liquidity as well. For those things that you didn't plan on, those things that come up that you want to do, like buying the second home, but I didn't know I was going to want to do that. And also those things that happen that you can't help, big medical emergency or an expense you didn't plan on. So not only do I want income, but I want flexibility and a lot of liquidity, but I want growth. And it's a conflict. Those parts are working kind of against each other. So the third component, the third pictorial in that retirement income dashboard is called the reliability of income. We also like to call it our ROI of retirement planning. In retirement, there's 2 types of income. The first type of income is what we call promise-based income. It's income that's generated from some contractual promised source, such as Social Security or a pension plan from an employer, or maybe rental income from a farm or a commercial property. And those are promise-based types of income streams. And then there's risk-based income. It's the income that you pull as a draw against the assets you have in the market that are volatile and are at risk. And so our goal is to get 80% of our income targeted, if possible, to promise-based income sources. There's a lot of clients and advisors out there that have a misnomer idea that the more promise-based income we create, the more we may sacrifice performance for the long haul. And what we found is completely opposite of that truth. Because the distribution rates of promise-based income solutions that create lifetime income generate 2-3 times the withdrawal rate safely for the rest of their lives that then I can take as a safe withdrawal rate against assets in the market. I then have to shrink, I can shrink the amount of dollars I hold hostage to generating the income that I desire while still having lots of liquidity and plenty of growth opportunity for inflation and other opportunities for the future, such as legacy for my heirs. And the fourth and final of the pictorials that are represented in that retirement income dashboard is discretionary liquidity. And there's a big correlation between how high a distribution rate I can secure to generate income I cannot outlive, and how many dollars that I can afford to put in the market and grow, but how much dollars I have available if those emergencies, if those discretionary things I want to do come up. And the more promise-based income, the higher the distribution rate securing those income dollars for a lifetime I can achieve. Not only the more dollars I can put in the market and chase growth, but the greater amount of free dollars I have for liquidity. And we call it free the hostages. And so it's a real simple concept that basically says if I'm stuck at 3% as a safe withdrawal rate, and all I do is a SWIP strategy, systematic withdrawal plan, that means I've got to have $1 million for every $30,000 of income I need, already not taken care of by Social Security or pensions. But if I can guarantee 6% instead of 3%, I only need $500,000 held hostage for every $30,000 of income. So it doesn't take much to understand how we create these efficiencies by creating much higher secure withdrawal rates as compared to just a single strategy of systematic withdrawal plans.
Wow, so there's a lot there, and I think the main thing you hit on that I think people will hear when they listen to this is obviously the main question of, am I going to outlive my money? And like you said, people living longer is obviously a huge part of that. But just sticking with Thrive University, as I listen to you lay that entire story out, are you guys speaking to and working more with who should be attending Thrive University? Is this more of the retiree or the professional financial person helping the retiree? Who should be attending Thrive?
Thrive University was designed specifically for financial practitioners who are very serious about doing retirement planning for their clients and finding optimal solutions. I might also add, this is not a program that lends itself or allows biases to products or solutions. When advisors come to Thrive University, they're to throw their biases out the window, at least during the 2-day class. Because I think what many will find who has not been to the class before is they will find truths about what is true and what does create efficiency that may be different than what they had at one time perceived prior. And so it's very important that they come prepared to get deep and wide into the weeds, because we get as deep as you can go and as wide as you can go in the retirement analytics.
Yeah, and let's build on that answer a little bit, because obviously you speak a lot, you're a sought after speaker, you speak all over the country, and you have obviously, I'm sure, young professionals, older professionals in the industry coming to you, and you kind of seemingly give away, I mean, and when you lay the case out, the time and effort that's gone in to come up with what you guys are working with and all kind of your, let's call them industry secrets, you seem to talk about freely, give away. Why is it so important to you to work with industry professionals to bring them up to speed with something, as you say, you go so into the weeds, but obviously in the end, it's to benefit those clients so that they have some peace of mind on those answers, like, will my money outlive my... Why is it so important to teach the industry and continue to give these strategies away like you do when you talk all over the country?
You know, I first discovered the benefits of a deferred income annuity as an example. I was so shocked that it was a product that had been established prior to my discovery, 20 years before I discovered it. But yet I'd never heard anybody talk about it. And you know what the issue was? It was revenue. See, the manufacturers make less on that product than other lifetime income products, so they don't want to talk about it. At least at the time, 1999 when I discovered it, they didn't want to talk about it. The wholesalers never got paid on it, so they didn't want to talk about it. And advisors got paid less revenue to provide it than other solutions, and so they didn't want to talk about it. But when I took a ladder D approach as compared to a ladder bond approach, which I was using a significant amount of time in 1990 for the retirement plans, I found that I could generate the same income, net of tax, for 30 to 40% less capital than it would take for a traditional laddered bond strategy. Now, do I still use bonds? Of course I do. But I found that the injection of a product nobody ever told me about, that I just accidentally discovered one day, created this 30, 40% efficiency that I didn't count on the industry telling us about. I certainly didn't count on advisors telling us about. And the reason is there's a conflict to how they're paid. And so I decided my mission in life was to be a ferocious consumer advocate. And the more that I could know about how to build these retirement plans efficiently, and the more I could reach advisors who would adapt and adhere to understanding and agreeing with what I had just discovered, the more impact I would have on consumers that were retiring all over the country. And so that became my sole focus mission, 1999. And I said, I've got to teach as fast as I can. And so that's been my life's mission since 1999.
Do you feel like, it's so funny because I talk to so many financial people on this show, and I feel like I always hear like what you just said, like it was never taught to me. I stumbled across it. If I talk to tax people, they talk about the IRMA tax right now, and they say, well, no one else is talking about IRMA to people. You say what you just said. Is there a lack of education in this industry, or is there a lack of motivation on the part of the professional to be as well educated to be able to present so many avenues to the client? Where is the fall off? Because I hear so much of that. It was never taught to me. I never learned about it. Someone, you know, you're doing one of a kind things. I hear that so much on this show. Where is that fall off?
Well, I think education is certainly part of it. And there's, unfortunately, the software that exists out there, Damon, is not multidimensional in terms of testing in the real environment for which we live. Yeah. So you mentioned as an example, IRMA tax. IRMA tax is automated and built right into my software program. Social Security provisional income tax is built right into the software program. It's a fully dynamic tax program, but allows you to test different ideas and theories under the hood. Another example is these deferred income annuities that I talk about with non-qualified, non-pre-tax dollars. The IRS treats the tax in those products completely different than they do any other investment product. It's something called tax exclusion tax ratio. If you haven't focused on these products, it may be something you've never heard of before. But what we've done is we've tried to take all of those misnomers, like the IRMA tax, like the provisional income tax, like this tax exclusion ratio, and we've allowed it to properly be applied for calculating taxes and fee drags and inflation. All those components are built in so that when you test one strategy over another strategy, this question over that question, it actually gives you an authentic answer and contrast in those four pictorials. Is this better for me? Is my legacy value higher? Is my withdrawal drag better? Is my reliability of income higher? And do I have more free liquidity? And that's the reason those things exist. This all sounds very complicated, but we've tried to create a program that once they have trust and confidence in the pictorials of that dashboard, that within a matter of seconds, as different things get tested, that can have a lot of confidence about, well, I'm going to throw that idea out the door, but I'm certainly going to adhere to this one I've never heard of before. And it gives confidence to make decisions. It simplifies the process for both the advisor who adheres to it and the clients that experience it.
What do retirees want when they come to you?
The number one thing they want is confidence that they can retire as they wish, when they want, and they can sleep at night. It's confidence. There's a lot of pieces and parts that have to move around and have to be assembled in order for that to be true. And some people have a perception of retirement based on a certain time frame who would be in grave danger if they did it the way they thought. And they need to be told not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. Yeah. So some people need to wait. Some people don't need to wait, but maybe they still should. I'll give you an example. I'll never forget Tim. Tim was the CEO of a large general contracting company, very successful over many years, still in existence to this day. Tim's idea when I met him at 35 as the CEO of that company was to retire at 55. And he told me, one day, Curtis, you're going to do my retirement plan. Well, I wasn't sure that was true, but for one of his own partners in 1999, it was how I discovered the original product that I've described in the show. And we utilized that program for his partner for the first time. And the day came when Tim turned 55, and I was invited to the party, and people flew in from around the country to enjoy and respect Tim's retirement. 6 months after Tim retired, Tim flew home from a winter spent in Florida. He made an appointment with me at the restaurant down a block from my office. When I slid in the booth and I asked him how it was going, his response to me was, "I'm miserable." And I was shocked and even a little offended, because I thought, well, I did Tim's retirement plan. And well, how can he be offended? And I said, "Tim, is there a problem with the assets? Is the market bad? Is Susie sick? What's going on?" And he goes, "None of those things. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's fine. I got more money than I'll ever spend, but I'm miserable." And I said, "Tim, why?" He said, "Nobody should retire at 55. He said, "Curtis, I had to sell my stock in the company. I had to give up the very thing that I valued as my own identity every day. And the 91st day on the golf course down there in Florida, all of a sudden this hollow feeling came inside of me, and I realized I'd made a tragic mistake. And I tore a track up, and I can't go back." He said, "When it comes to retirement planning and the financials, you're pretty good, but everything else, you kind of suck." And that's the day that I realized that retirement planning was not just about the money. Retirement planning was also about purpose and meaning, and finding a joy at a level of confidence that you could go do things when no one was paying you to still feel meaningful and purposeful. And I have found that more people should transition to retirement, even though financially they can afford to retire, rather than give up their day job for which has defined their identity for the majority of their life. Now, this is probably more true for men than women, but sometimes they shouldn't retire when they think they want to retire, just because it's a bad idea for their emotional health.
Boy, that's a fascinating story. The human level of it all, I don't think most people think about. Let me ask you about retirees, and what do they look for in an advisor? Obviously, the things you have described are very, very complicated. Does the retiree need to know their advisor, what the advisor is doing as far as trying to explain all these strategies to them? Do they need to understand it? Or they, as you said, do they just need to feel confident that this advisor can get them where they want to be? What do they look for in an advisor?
Well, there's certainly some things you can look for that limits the chance that you'll pick the wrong advisor. Obviously, there's always a risk that you will pick the wrong advisor. But the first one is you want to make sure that you find an advisor that's fluent in all the tools and strategies. They understand them as it relates to retirement planning. You don't want someone that's biased to this product or that product. You want to be able to test all ideas, concepts, and strategies, not have some biases. Secondly,
are there buckets to those strategies? Is it income, tax? What are there buckets to that when you say all of the strategies?
Yeah, that's a long question. That's a long answer.
Okay.
And so, it takes us 2.5 days to really scratch the surface of all of that during our 2-day Thrive University planning. But you want to have somebody that's certainly not biased to both insurance and investment products. Advisors that are investment only, they're going to limit your potential success of optimal solutions that could create more income with less dollars and create a greater legacy account balance for your heirs while creating more liquidity during your retirement. Secondly, is to find an advisor that has the RICP, Retirement Income Certified Professional designation. I'm one of the adjunct professors at the American College that helped write the curriculum for the RICP course. And in that RICP course, there were 42 academics that were brought together that would expand on all of these strategies, these ideas, these concepts universally, where none of the ideas were left off the table. Some programs have a bent. They try to lean you a certain way, like to get you to believe a certain thing. This course said, no, we're going to teach advisors all the strategies, even when they were good, even when they were bad, but we want all concepts and ideas taught. So you're going to know that when you find somebody that's an RICP, that they have been through that regimen of understanding all different product subsets and tools that actually exist. And it's more likely they're going to be open to what it is that is in your best interest. Also find a fiduciary. My recommendation is a fiduciary, especially if you're doing investments in the market, is the most appropriate advisor to consider.
I'm fascinated by Tim's story, and I want to just go back to that because I think you said 55 on him. People in, let's call it pre-retirement, or let's use a sports analogy, kind of in the red zone, looking at the end zone. Is there an age, do you think, a pre-retiree starts to think about, I got to find somebody, or start to think about, I'm getting close to the end zone here, I'm on the 10-yard line, to use a sports analogy? What is that age?
Well, it's interesting that you asked the question. What you're really asking is, how far in advance of my retirement should I be planning? And the answer is no less than 5-10 years before. Too many people call me up and say, hey, I'm retiring next year, or I'm retiring next month. We can do it, but your opportunities for a vector switch on what it is that you're doing versus what you should be doing, virtually no chance of making a vector change of any meaningful impact. But if I'm 5-10 years out and you're on the wrong course and you find out 5-10 years out, the vector change is a minimal adjustment to something not very painful to adjust to. And so, we even recommend 15 years out for those clients that are willing to participate that far out in advance. But as far as what age should you retire, understand there is no age of retirement. In fact, the word retirement was an invented word. Way back in the 1900s, it was Otto Bismarck, the Chancellor of Europe, that basically realized that he had a problem. He had older workers in his environment that were refusing to retire. And so he said he would provide a pension at 65 to everyone that would retire, so it would give an opportunity for the younger generation to have jobs. And that was where the word retirement was originally established. So we think retirement's an entitlement. In fact, I don't even like the word retirement. Let me tell you the word I like to insert in its place, refirement. See, I think we should retire to something rather than retire from something. Refirement should be about a transition, an orderly transition from accumulating wealth and generating income for which the wealth that we've created is able to maintain that income for which we now can expend our time, resources, and passions for the things that make us happy, the things that make us feel challenged, the things that get us up every day like we did when we were working because we had to. And that's a difference of retirement over refirement. And I think that's the difference. Retirement should be when that can occur.
Let's talk about, we talked about a lot of things, the timing, the age, the human element, which I think is so important. Is there a regret that you feel most retirees have? Is it that they come to you too late, and as you described that vector, they're not giving enough time? Is it that they feel like maybe after they've picked somebody, they're not sure if it's right? What is the biggest regret from retirees that you've come across?
Number one is not planning early enough.
Yeah.
It is the number one. The other one is retiring too soon for the things I just mentioned.
Yeah.
They give up their day job when they shouldn't, and they lose their identity and their purpose and their meaning. They don't understand something called the sequence of returns risk. Instead of dollar cost averaging working to your benefit, it's sequence of returns that works against your benefit. And you mentioned the red zone. That was actually a terminology, a trademark of Prudential. I worked for Prudential for 18 years. And it's called the retirement red zone. It's the 10 years before you retire, and this is the 10 years after retirement. Moshe Milewski, Moshe is an academic at York University in Toronto, Canada. He basically did a research paper that said a 20% decline in the red zone, 20 years before, 20 years after, creates a potential 80% greater chance you'll run out of income and retirement. And so that red zone that you mentioned is quite important. The lack of building flexibility. Some of these programs don't give you an out if you pick the wrong lane, right? And lastly, underspending out of fear of what I call just-in-case retirement. You know, you work your whole life and you think to yourself, one of these days I'm going to buy that camper, I'm going to travel the world, I'm going to buy that boat, I'm going to go to Europe, and you just fill in the blanks. and you retire, and you're so used to hoarding and saving and not spending, and you get to retirement, and there's no way anybody is going to change your pattern of behavior. And so you constrain subliminally your spending and your economic behavior out of the fear of what if, just in case I need it. And guess what happens? You live a suboptimal retirement because you're always in constant fear that you can't afford it. And you die, and guess who buys the camper and travels the world and buys the boat? Your kids. And so too many people live a just-in-case retirement by underspending, not understanding how they can spend an adequate amount they don't have to hoard for a just-in-case retirement.
What's interesting about everything you just said is most of those regrets or mistakes, they all seem they seem very avoidable with just a little bit of professional advice, professional help at the right time.
Well, let me just say this. The most avoidable mistake is not planning early enough. Everyone can fix that by planning. Too oftentimes, people are afraid to go to a financial advisor because they don't know who to trust. I get it. But they also fear that it's going to cost too much. Well, they don't understand that the cost isn't the advisor. The cost is bearing the mistakes financially of not having a plan. And everyone needs to have a written plan. And by the way, get more than one opinion. If you've got two advisors that you can check with, get more than one opinion. The second thing is choosing that wrong advisor. You can really choose the wrong advisor, so be careful of that. The third most avoidable mistake is understanding what a safe withdrawal rate is. I'll never forget when I had a client come into my office and I asked them this question: what do you think a safe withdrawal rate is? And they told me 10%. So they had in their mind that if they had $1 million, they could safely take $100,000 out a year for the rest of their life, and that would be enough. When in fact, safe withdrawal rate today is 3%. You see, 4% back in 1994, but we're living 4.5, 5 years longer. We have these black swan events that have never happened before. Markets aren't performing at the same way they did. So researchers now argue over 2 and 3%. So if it's 3%, it's only 30,000 a million. It's not 100,000 a million. And they get caught off guard going, but I thought I had enough. So part of that long-term planning is to identify how much is enough based on your Social Security, and if you're lucky enough still to have a pension, and whatever your other income and asset resources are. You can define that number so far in advance that if you're undersaving, you can save more. If you're allocating too much to pre-tax when you should be allocating in your tax bracket more to Roth, you can define those differences. Those differences are huge economic differences if you're making mistakes. So the 3 avoidable mistakes are very simple. Don't wait too long to plan. Secondly, choose the right advisor. And third, understand what a safe withdrawal rate is and get educated on that before you come to see your financial provider.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. We have covered a lot of ground. Let's do the most important thing we can do today. Let people know how they can get a hold of you, where you're speaking, where they can get more information on Thrive, on NextGen, on Acuity, all the things that encompass the world of Curtis Cloke. Let the people know where they can go and how they can get in contact with you.
Well, my upcoming speaking engagements include the MDRT Edge meeting down in Orlando in November. September, I'm at the NAFA meeting in Minneapolis, and then I'll also be speaking for 4 Ash brokerage events, and I don't remember all the locations of Nashville and I think in Utah, somewhere over in Utah City. I don't remember the actual locations, but then I'm also going to be speaking for Modern Woodman in Kalamazoo, Michigan in September as well. So lots of different dates that are coming up. We're scheduling dates all of the time. If you want to get a hold of us, I have different websites. My speaker's website is www.curtiscloke.com. My education website is www.thriveincome.com. My retirement software website is www.retirementnextgen.com. My financial firm site is www.acuityfinancial.com. My email address is my first initial last name, ccloke@thriveincome.com, and my advisor email is ccloke@acuityfinancial.com. If you'd like to reach out to us by phone number is 515-298-4748.
Well, Curtis, it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. A lot of information out there for people, and I'm sure they'll continue to, like you said, go to those websites and give you a call. Thank you so much for coming back on Spotlight Television.
Thank you, Damon.
And I want to thank you for joining us today on Spotlight Television. Once again, I want to thank Curtis Cloke, and I want to thank Leslie Ann Morris as well for appearing. You can always visit us on the web at www.spotlighttelevision.com. Once again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on Spotlight Television.